Today I will be talking you through the aesthetics of subcultures. We all have an idea or image that springs to mind when I mention a few key words. Goth, punk, emo, nerd, hip-hop, gamer, drag, skater, surfer. Now some of these may seem more like stereotypes and not necessarily subcultures by themselves. However, if we look into the following definitions, we will see that they are their own subcultures. The Cambridge Online Dictionary describes subculture as a way of life, customs and ideas of a particular group or people within a society that are different from the rest of society. So does this mean that religion is a subculture, or everything we follow is its own form of a religion? This is also proven as we see cultures from country to country are different from one another. Cambridge Online Dictionary also describes aesthetics as the formal study of art, especially in relation to the idea of beauty. So with that in mind, and the saying, beauty is in the eye of the beholder, we can see how people are attracted to their own subcultures. Fashion plays a huge part in the aesthetic of subcultures, as it's the first noticeable thing and only directly visual aspect of specific subcultures. Going back to our examples, if I rattle off some again, goth, drag and skater, I'm sure you can visualize some generic or stereotypical visuals that you associate with those subcultures. Or if you are a part of those subcultures, then you would have a more detailed idea of what is right and wrong. Fashion brands tailor some of their clothing lines to specific subcultures, and they are also then influences of that subculture's fashion. This is easy enough to find yourself if you just Google subculture X clothing. As you can see by these examples, these are literally the first three websites that come up when you search goth, drag, and skater. And I personally think they're quite accurate for each description. This confirms that subcultures have aesthetics and also confirms the aesthetic as a signifier. But subculture and aesthetics also make us think of a hidden meaning behind just the visual dressings of a specific subculture style. But what separates these fashions from each other? On a quick uneducated glance, goth could just be taken as the black-only version of drag. And what makes skaters and surfers different? Are there subcultures within subcultures? Aesthetic is the way we view things and determine if it has any value and beauty. But this can be a little more complicated when talking about something such as music, film, or video games. Aesthetic can be used to explain a visual concept or can be more complicated, such as a vibe or feeling, sound, or dynamic. We then use a bunch of descriptor words to help build the idea of what we want to convey to the audience from the artist's perspective. But again, if beauty is in the eye of the beholder, no one is right or wrong in saying something is beautiful to them. This stems into how subcultures' beliefs and visual aesthetic is born. The idea of defining art with a rating system is something that a lot of people get twisted up in, and if the person sees that a thing they enjoyed gets a higher or lower score than they believe it deserved, then they may get upset and then write off that person's opinion entirely. But at the end of the day, that's all it is, someone's opinion. You can choose to agree or disagree with that person, but that doesn't make them wrong and you right, or vice versa. I believe art is subjective, and if something clicks with you, that's cool, and if it doesn't, move on and find something that does. Aesthetic is an ideology that we all have our own personal definition of, yet it gets thrown around as a generalized term. Defining how we enjoy aesthetic is a tough one because there is no way to prove what is right or wrong, and this is how we have so many subcultures. So, if we are attracted to the general aesthetics of a subculture from a purely visual aspect at first, then surely we are then interested in the way they view the rest of the world, as the definition of subculture suggests. This leads us to generally building relationships with people within a subculture or multiple subcultures as we get along and enjoy or hate the same things. These can be anything and everything, similar media consumption such as music, film, TV and books, political views and stances, and a general outlook on life. These subculture relationships are also explored in media and intertwined with good versus evil storylines. In the generic tale of nerds versus jocks, we can see the aesthetics of these two opposing groups generally summed up within the first few seconds of each group's introduction. They are obviously over-dramatized for the sake of the film, in most cases, but that also helps identify them sooner. Nerds being identified by their dorky-looking clothes, big glasses, odd speech patterns, etc. Then the jocks, who can be defined by their height, school jackets, and confidence. Again, these are all generic tropes that we've gotten used to over the years of consuming media, but it makes it easier for us to digest and not question things when you see nerds talking to other characters that look like nerds. It just makes sense because of our automatic assumption and knowledge of subcultures. But how did subcultures come to be? The term subculture was first found in English texts in 1914. It was coined to identify people who were a subgroup of culture. It was also used as a descriptor for counterculture or anti-culture. It is used as a way to identify and find solidarity among others such as race, country of origin, and class. The Cambridge Online Dictionary defines culture as the way of life, especially the general customs and beliefs of a particular group of people at a particular time. So we can see how we are getting subculture from this definition as we would get subgenres through music. If we break down the word culture, we get cult. Cambridge defines this as something being liked by a particular group or people. They also define it as a religious group whose beliefs are considered extreme or strange by many people. Therefore, subcultures are cults and are then very much like religion. Is going to a music concert a cult meeting? Is going to see a film at a cinema a cult meeting? The general society looks at subcultures as a threat, enemy, or resistant force because they don't agree with everything they are spoon-fed by normal culture. Society, or mainstream, is what they want to be the new normal and dominant culture. Things like bikie gangs, where they wear gang patches on their jackets, or gangs where they wear crew colours, are a notable example of what society wants to scrub out. I believe we see more separation from the way that society wants us to be nowadays, as we aren't forced to watch TV or read the newspaper that has always been controlled by big corporations or the government. These TV news shows are only showing a 4-minute clip before the next ad break and only showing one side of the story and then advertising it with buzzwords to get your attention. It is very controlled. Whereas the development of the internet has allowed us to think for ourselves and find the people we relate to with news stories told from multiple perspectives or conversations that last longer than an edited piece for TV. Unedited long run-time podcasts and interviews, or having someone purposefully ask a controversial question to get more depth out of someone, allows us to get more information and in turn allow us to form our own opinions on things as they are simply laid out in more detail for us. This comes back to subculture and aesthetics as we gravitate towards content based on subcultures we are already involved in or interested in. We find news based on music we like involving that sphere of people, or interviews with actors from films we enjoy. We recently learned about postmodernism and post-structuralism, but what about post-subculture? Post-subculture is a strong possibility now, as we are so overexposed to things thanks to the internet and fashion companies having an influence on us and how we see things, as well as our phones sending us ads that are relevant to real-life conversations we are having now. But a person may be aesthetically attracted to some item of clothing and choose to wear it simply just because they think it looks good without looking into it any further or being exposed to the ethos of that particular subculture. And then they may have the complete opposite ideals of that subculture. Does this lead to people being more of an individual as they aren't trying to fit into a certain subculture? Or are they just trying to pick and choose not to be put in a box with other people? Is it just an extension of trying to be an individual and stand out from the crowd? Or we just start stringing subculture titles together, so we have titles for every little detail about someone. This person is a goth drag hip hop brony. Imagine that. Is it postmodernist to be a post-subculturist? Do we even need the term subculture anymore? In conclusion, at the end of the day, subculture is just another way to label something, someone, or a group, as that's what we do as a species. It's the same as labeling genres for video games, film, and music. You may like the aesthetic of a subculture, but not enjoy the views they share, and vice versa. These are ways of identifying as an individual and trying not to be pigeonholed. You can also have relationships with people who aren't particularly interested or involved with your subculture. This comes back to being able to describe things and have signifiers for various things. But aesthetically, You either like something or you don't. It's really that simple. Thanks for listening to my speech.